Hi, and welcome to Books in Action. My name is Larry Petricaro, and I have with me this evening Melissa Kopecky, who is the director of the South Orange Public Library, and Christine Crawford, who is the director of Children's Services at the South Orange Public Library. And we're going to talk tonight a little bit about libraries, about what happens in the library, what's a typical day, sort of a typical day in the life of a librarian. And we'll start with you, Melissa. Let's kind of sketch out a little bit of what happens. I mean, there's so many things in a library that probably people aren't really aware of.
Yeah, actually, Christine and I were talking about this, and we were thinking sort of going through the course of a day at a library, and I was hoping you were going to ask me about a typical day at the library, because then I could just say, there's no such thing. You're talking about a public space and full of all kinds of interesting people with all different reasons for being there, and so there's no such thing as typical, but you took that line from me. I managed to work it in anyway.
Thank you.
And there is so much that happens in the library that people have no idea about. And I mean, for one, before we open to the public, we usually have 2 staff members there who are turning on the computers, bringing in the mail, getting the newspapers out. I mean, we have people who come to the library actually to read the newspapers every morning, the old-fashioned way, to answer the phones. We usually start answering the phones ahead of when the doors are open to the public, and all the other things that get ready to open a space to people to walk in. And then the doors are unlocked, people come in. Let's see. Some of the things are really obvious that you would think, that we bring in books that were left in, say, the book drop, or any kind of item that was left in the book drop overnight. That's the old-fashioned side of the library. I mean, what people may not realize is the new-fashioned side is if instead of running out in the middle of the night because you just are like, oh no, my books are due tomorrow, you could go online and you could renew them as long as nobody else was waiting for them, and then just bring them in the next time you happen to come by the building. So we empty the book drop, and let's see, what's one of the first things that happens in the children's room?
Often it's story time is one of the first things that happens in the children's room. We usually have, almost every day there's at least 1 children's program. Sometimes we have 2 going on at the same time. Sometimes we have, 4 done within 2 hours. So that can be very busy. The room fills up with toddlers, which is hectic but fun. And then, as the day progresses, there's the after-school rush, which is kids coming in to do homework assignments, some kids coming in just to hang out after school, to use the computers, check their email and whatnot. What else?
The best part about it is those are sort of the average things, and some of them are things that people think of what's happening. But while that story time is going on, there's 10, at least, maybe 20 or 30 other interactions going on at the same time. So a story time is something everybody thinks of when they think of a public library, but they may not think about the people who are behind the scenes processing the books, or the people who are doing research on maybe a question they've been helping somebody with over the course of a week or 2, or we get more inquiries now from far-off places because of the ease at which people can track us down and then communicate with us by email. So we may have an email from somebody in Italy explaining they're working on this, some kind of novel or research topic, and it involves somebody who once lived in South Orange, and could we find whatever pertained to that particular person or family and send them back. Or the latest was a film, and they were just looking for photos to use as a backdrop, or a montage, I think, is part of the title piece or something, and they wanted to find some old historic pictures of South Orange. So that might be happening in one place. There might be someone, coming in to use a computer but also needing assistance. We do a lot of that, not really sure, how do you go online, or how am I going to find this thing I need to look up? Which actually, in a lot of things like job searches, is very important now. I mean, quite a number of years ago, all the civil service jobs, the state jobs, ceased being listed in any paper format whatsoever. So you have to go online to find that. So We have an assistive technology workstation, which
what kind of technology?
Yeah, and I'm just whipping off stuff. It's assistive technology, and it's a computer and trimmings and other hardware to assist you to go online. So it's for the visually impaired, for the blind. It's sometimes used for people with maybe attention or focus problems. So there's a couple aspects to it. There's a piece of hardware that was developed actually as a job. That's what made me think of that, as a job search thing for the visually, well, actually for the blind, so that you could go online or use a computer in a job search if you couldn't see. And it's a very sophisticated and very complicated piece of software that allows you, using the keyboard, to navigate any web page and have it read to you. It's pretty amazing. Some of the staff, all of us were sort of generally trained. The training for me served to say, oh my goodness, that's absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad I have other staff who are getting more thoroughly trained. It's very complicated. So what happens, though, is the state trains a lot of people on that, but they have a problem finding a place to go practice because it's not common software. So we have that. So if anybody should need to come and practice using this JAWS software, they can. But there's some other neat pieces, too. There's you can scan a document and have it read back to you. We have sophisticated visual magnification things. You know, Microsoft comes with the little magnifier, and Apple's have a magnifying thing too. And there's all these things you could do on your own, but this is actually a laid over, even better one. So if you do have visual difficulties, it makes it much easier to see the monitor. So somebody might be using that or just finding out information about it. And then there might be people who are using the library without even being in the building at the same time.
Yeah, how can you?
I'm going to stop talking.
Christine, I guess you've been delegated. It's good to delegate. So.
We have, for one thing, we have a lot of databases online, which a lot of people, when they're doing research, might go to Google or websites like that, which are fine and they're a great place. But we have databases that we pay for and the public can use, and you can access them from home, and you can do research, so you can access New York Times articles online from home. You don't have to come into the library to get the back issues. There's encyclopedias online. There's directories online where you can look up phone numbers and addresses, and all sorts of different databases. There's some geared towards kids, some geared towards adults, some that sort of overlap. So there's a lot of stuff there. Like Melissa mentioned before, you can check what books you have out online, renew online, check your status online, put things on hold. A lot of people call in for reference questions instead of coming into the library. You can call in, or you can send an email to librarian@sopl.org and you can get a response to us that way. And another thing, Melissa talked a lot about the patron interactions with the staff members, but there are also patrons just interacting with each other in the library. So there's a lot of, parents and nannies and au pairs who come in to sort of gather and meet with each other. And there's, tutors with their students in the library, or people helping other people do their taxes. So there's always just sort of a lot going on in the room, even if the staff aren't directly involved with it at all times.
Well, it goes back, I think, to what you said at the beginning, was it sort of public place. So I'm not sure we always think of it that way as a public place, but probably tend to think of it maybe more as a private place where the public goes. Where you go there and you kind of isolated yourself. And typically, like the last time I went to the library was to pick up tax forms. It's not like. But you mentioned, Christine, databases. Is there a menu or someplace to find this database, or to find what's the different ones that are there? Because that could be, I think, very valuable.
It's all on our library website, which is www.sopl.org, and there's different tabs across the top. One of them says reference, and that's where you can see our list of databases. There's also some suggested websites that we have there, and some other great things you can access from our website. Downloadable audiobooks.
From the website?
Yeah, from our website you can we have a whole, I forget what the number is, but we have a whole bunch of downloadable audiobooks. So a lot of people who listen in the car, you can burn them to CD right from home. You don't have to come into the library. You can download them to your MP3 player and listen at home. And you never have to come in for that, which is really kind of cool.
Is there a charge for that, or it's all free?
It's all free. You just have to have your library card.
Library card.
And the same thing with the databases. Well, because they are paid databases that are structured and built by a company, it's like a reference book in that sense. So they're not going to say, yeah, sure, you buy it and we'll give access to the world. So you do need the library card to access the database. Say, yes, I'm a valid, patron of this library, and and as such, I can download an audiobook or and actually or use one of the databases. And I know a lot of people don't really. We have a list that we keep at the library with a description that we hand out to people of all of these databases and the things that are available through them. Because what Christine said about the names and addresses, people think, oh yeah, I can Google that. I can find anything I need. And in some ways you can, and we're certainly not discounting using Google. As a matter of fact, that's another thing that we could get to later. Remind me about classes that we teach. And we will teach Google searching as a class, But why not know both? Because what I can do with our paid database is structure a really tight search. So show me a female physician who graduated from Harvard who practices in any one of these 5 towns. So I can get really fast to a much more specific answer to a question than just Googling it. But it's not like we're against Google. It's just like, you know all the tools you have at your disposal. And best of all, ask somebody to help you or to figure out which tools there are, which is one of the things that working with children is really easier, because you can just go up to a kid and you can say, look, let me show you this. It's harder to do it with other people, and I think kids are also faster to ask. I'm not sure what to do here, or I need information on this and I have no idea. It's a very rare an adult who's going to say, I don't know what to do to find this, or what's the best way to do it. So, but that's why we like to get in conversations with people, because maybe they know it all, but maybe there's tools we have that we can tell them about.
We have only about a minute left, so maybe this will be something that we're going to have to talk about in the second part of the show. But do you have courses just to help get people familiar with computers? There's a lot of, I think, people that somehow are computer phobic. They somehow are afraid that they touch the wrong key and the screen's going to blow up or something. I think. Do you have a way to help them around that?
We do offer computer classes, which is and classes in specific software. And you're looking at me like you're going to start on a talking roll again.
Well, I was noticing that we only have about 30 seconds, so it sounds like the kind of conversation we want to start at the beginning. So why don't we do that when we come back? So if you'll stay with us, we'll be back in a minute.
If a natural disaster happened and we were outside the home, we'd probably all meet, I'll say, around the grocery store,
We would all meet at a bus stop. That is our meeting place.
Well, we would probably just meet out in front of the house.
We'd probably meet at our neighbor's house.
If you have no plan, then you can just plan what to do as it happens.
Hi, and welcome back. I have with me tonight Christine Crawford, the Director of Children's Services at the South Orange Public Library, and Melissa Kopecky, the Director of the South Orange Public Library. And just before the break, we were talking about people who might need some help in some of the basic aspects of computing. Just maybe manipulating the mouse or the keyboard or things of that nature. People who are, I've had those instances where you forget and you scroll down and all of a sudden everything you've done is missing, and you think that the world's come to an end, but really you're just like 20 pages into of nothing, I mean, blank pages. So now, are these just things that, people who need help with it, basic help with the computer, they just come and talk to one of the members of the staff, or you actually have a class that you conduct periodically?
Of course, there's a lot of answers to that. One is we do have classes that we conduct regularly. We do help people one-on-one where we can. We have, and are currently trying to figure out actually what times work best. Times for one-on-one reference help, where you want help not like how do I use the mouse, but where you really need to research something and you might need to go in a different way, or you might need to fill out an online form or something and have no idea how to negotiate with it. So of course by appointment you can always set that up, because there might be those 30 people things going on all over the building. We might not have somebody to devote a real large amount of time to right then, but if you set it up ahead of time for something really specific, we would be happy to do that. But another thing about our classes that we think is really amazing and that I haven't heard of a lot of other libraries doing. I love South Orange. I love the community. I love the library, and I love the staff at the library, and they're just amazing people. And we do some amazing things because we have these great people on both sides to work with. And one of the things we do is we will do classes on demand. And on demand is whatever kind of combination of people that want to get together. So, a couple friends who get together occasionally and have coffee and say, yeah, I've never really had a chance to build a PowerPoint presentation. Or a Girl Scout troop who realizes they don't have anybody who really knows how to use a digital camera to take pictures when they go out on their events and really put it together. Well, and this is a hard one. We have telling people that we do this. You come to us and say, or I work with a community group and we just really need to know how to use Excel well enough to keep a mailing list and how to update it and then how to print off labels off of it. Come to the library and we will work with you to find a time, and we will use most likely one of our very talented staff, but if it's something that's beyond something really esoteric, then we'll help to try to arrange some kind of training for it.
And that's true not only for computer classes, but for all kinds of programs. We've started story times just because parents have come in and said, why don't you do a story time at this time of the week? And we'll say, you know what, if you have a group of kids who's interested, we will. Or we've had my Reading Rules book group on this show, and that started, one of our staff members saw an online discussion board, a local online discussion board. There was somebody started a thread about, are there any book groups for kids this age? So I went on and said, I can start one if you want one, and so we started one, and it really took off. So we can do all kinds of programs by request.
By request, by demand, on demand.
On demand.
That's a very sort of almost kind of a modern sound, like movies on demand or something. Do you do classes for kids as well? I mean,
we've done computer classes for kids, and we actually also are willing to visit the schools. A lot of the schools have invited us to do computer classes in this or that, and we'll visit.
And that you actually work real closely with Maplewood, obviously,
right.
And they do a lot of, which during that course of that not so typical day, Christine and any number of the staff might be out of the building working with someone else. We work closely with Maplewood, especially on things that involve either the joint communities or the school district.
Do you work with the school librarians as well?
We do have quite a bit of interaction with the school librarians. We like to keep in touch for simple things like they'll email us and say this assignment is coming up for this grade so that we can prepare books. We work with teachers. Teachers can say to us, I'm doing a unit coming up on such and such a topic, and we'll gather some books for them, and we'll throw in, whatever kind of DVDs, whatever audio books, whatever kind of materials we have, and we can prepare that ahead of time for them so that they have materials to work with. So we work as much as possible with the schools.
Now, some of the things that we were talking about, some of the different things and you were talking about all the reference materials. Is the library kind of obligated to keep certain types of governmental records, or the things that you have to keep, that you're the repository of, that if people need, like whatever it might be, I don't know.
There are governmental repository libraries, and I'm impressed that you know that. We are not one, but we work with the ones that are. So yes, any kind of even historically, government document that would be necessary to find, we could find for people. I think we can go outside of the library to get a lot of stuff that I still think people don't realize.
Like what?
I mean, we can interlibrary loan books. If we don't own it, that doesn't mean that you, as a patron of the South Orange Library, can't borrow it. We'll borrow it from another library for you. And as a matter of fact, that's another online thing that people can do. They can search libraries. You can actually put in requests for yourself from across the state libraries, for a book. Or we will do it for you. I mean, there's no obligation.
And we can search, throughout the country.
Really?
For books. Obviously, we start with the local libraries and see what we can find locally, but harder to find things we've gotten from all across the country.
Really? I mean, so there's that kind of cooperation, which is really kind of nice. How about like Seton Hall? I mean, being in town, or any of the universities, do you have any, do you work with them, or do they tend to be focused on something different that it just doesn't
We work with them on a lot of different levels, but as far as the actual libraries, we belong to a consortium of, this is one of my favorite stories about libraries, because there used to be a county sort of cooperative library system that was funded by the county, and years ago, probably 15 years ago, when county funding was dropped, the card was dropped, and the directors of the Essex County Public Libraries, of which I was not one at the time, so I can tell the story and say it's a wonderful thing, and I'm not blowing my own horn, said this is really a need. We want our patrons to be able to walk into the next town and to borrow whatever they want from there. So they just sort of agreed to administer this. That used to be administered by the library. So there's a program called Rebel. It's completely by library choice to participate, but so anybody who has a South Orange Library card can come and get the little sticker on their card, and they could go in and use the Seton Hall Library. They could use the Rutgers Newark Library. They could use, that's how Maplewood and South Orange use each other's libraries, which we greatly encourage. Any of the kids from kindergarten through 12th grade in the school system can have a card at both, but the others, we just do it through this Rebel program. So you could walk into West Orange or East Orange and use your South Orange Library card.
Well, if I were to show up with my Maplewood Library card over at South Orange and I didn't have one of those little stickers, I could get one right then and there?
You get it at your home library.
Get it at the home
actually.
library. You'd have to get it at Maplewood, okay.
But part of the reason we're able to customize things we do, which is what I was going to say, we would probably just call Maplewood and say, is this guy for real? He's a little suspicious looking. And, and go ahead and loan you something. But you might not find that if you went to a bigger library where they have to follow.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of our library, too, is that we're small, we're in a small community, we're in an interesting community, and we can take a lot of feedback and have a lot less lag time to translate that into, we can provide that. That's something missing, we can do it.
Now, when you go to the library, I mean, the thing I'm most familiar with is the sort of the way you catalog them. I guess you used to use like the card catalogs where you could go through the cards piece by piece. I'm sure that's long gone. But, you certainly have to be organized. How do you, if you went and bought a book about astronomy, how would you decide where to put it?
You're gonna test me. I'm trying to remember the Dewey Decimal number.
System at the beginning of this conversation, because then that always makes people go, oh, yeah, I remember learning that in school. Oh, I can't remember, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's also the beauty of being a small library, is because we're pretty free to tweak it, because ultimately it's just a system for how can you find the books? How can people find the books? Also, in a public library, you want to create, how can we put similar books together so they can go and sort of browse as well as find a book? So,
So like one thing, when we get a new book, we create the record for that book. So when you go to our card catalog and you try to search for something by subject, we've put those subjects in there.
Okay.
So we can tailor subjects to things that we know people will look for. For example, a lot of the schools for a while were doing projects on fairy tales that were retold in different forms. So we could just go in and add a subject heading that said fairy tales retold. so that people could search for that, or people could come to us and we would know exactly what to type in to search for that book and get them a whole list of things that they could find.
This is on the computer now.
This is on the computer now,
So
yes.
that must simplify this cataloging issue a lot, I would think.
It does, and it's always, libraries are always looking for ways to add layers, to allow people to tag things with their own subject headings is something, you know, we have fun talking about, and some libraries are exploring, and we're monitoring to see how that would work for us. Like if you're using a photo share site like Flickr, and you can tag your pictures, you know, every one of yours has Larry, so you could look for Larry in South Orange, and you'd find all the pictures of you partying in South Orange. So how can you add that layer of stuff to a record? Like,
Or
we
hide
don't
it.
want to give up our subject headings because they're really well organized. But then again, we want to allow people to use their own ways of thinking of things. So that's where that card catalog, you couldn't do keyword searching with, you know?
Yeah.
It was all alphabetical.
Yeah.
So now we've at least added that layer that you can look through the whole record for some words. So you don't need to know the title or the author. You can find what might be in the description of the book.
Now, when you catalog something initially and you put in what you think, does somebody give you those keywords, or do you? Is it? You talk about it in a very interesting way. Like it can evolve to the point where you can become very, very, very specific if you're looking for something. Because it should be simple enough to electronically alter the file. You don't have to go to the whatever it is you have to go to.
Right. You don't have to keep those paper.
This paper.
Shelfless. Oh my God.
But that's
there was a whole library cataloging. Yeah, but I mean, there's going to be difficulties inherent in any attempt to like sort of organize the body of knowledge of the world, because there's always going to be new things. I mean, it's fascinating because, you know, European countries get their own decimal place. They don't get their own, and then the newer countries are in the...
You get longer and longer decimal numbers.
On the other side of the decimal point is you have to subcategorize things for things that aren't, you know,
which a lot of times makes them harder for people to find.
Is like, you know, point blah, 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 because it didn't exist when this sort of structure was created. So it's really interesting. You can read social history out of that, too. There's no place for the internet, you know? So where do you catalog those books? And does it matter that it fits in the subject heading, or that people can go find them when they're looking for them?
But it's that retrieval that you're talking about is so interesting. When you talked about the situation where you're trying to let people do their own cataloging, that made me think of was that Wikipedia, that encyclopedia where anybody can contribute. And it kind of seems to self-correct and self-regulate itself. Is that the kind of thing you were talking about with the...
I think... You know, people say, oh, with Wikipedia, with this and that, our library's dying. I think with this proliferation of information and all the ways to share that information, be it in a wiki format or in, you know, in just being able to access databases online or whatever, like, where else do you need an information professional more? And if you're using Wikipedia, you know, do you know the difference between how that's created and how Encyclopedia Britannica is created? And you might find one or the other more valuable for a particular thing.
With that, unfortunately, I think we're just about out of time. So for those of you that are interested in retrieving information, we'll see you in the library.